this book it's called And Then There Were Three. It's a memoir. I wrote this as part of my MFA. It's a Master of Fine Arts degree. It's a terminal degree for writers, that if you want to teach after an MFA, you don't need a PhD. I completed my MFA at George Mason University in Fairfax, Virginia in the US. And this book started off as a thesis, because you have to produce a thesis to graduate from that program. And the very first essay got me into that program by way of, merit that I can write. And during the course of the 4 years that I spent, I wrote this book. It's the main thing about the book is it's set in a very short period of my life, from the time that I was 10 when my father died, and from the time up until 20 when I got married. So the way I project it is when the first man in my life exited and the next man in my life came in. So it's because every book I was taught as my non-fiction classes has to have an arc. It has to start somewhere, it has to peak, it has to go down. So the 10 years, and I wrote this all as personal essays. So it's not a continuous novel type of book. It's just written, it's chronologically ordered, but it goes from one essay to the other. So if you pick up the book and read the third essay or the fifth essay, it's absolutely fine. And it's just that I take different topics and just expand on them. This was 40 years back. So if you have to realize that 40 years back in a big city like Bombay, it's a 31-year-old woman who's left with no husband. My father was 39 at the time, died overnight of a massive heart attack, so no inkling that he's going to be gone. And then I left with a 9-year-old and a 6-year-old, 2 girls. My mother had to raise us alone, so she refused to go to Bangalore, where we are from, saying, oh, I don't want relatives interfering in the way I raise my girls. So she moved to a new city, happens to be Jaipur, started a school of her own, did not listen to anyone, raised us the way she thought it was fit. So it was a huge thing for us to be uprooted and being, not having a father figure, but my mother being everything for us. I take, for example, the first essay, if you take it chronologically, I have a prologue, just remembering my father, or just a short, you could also call it a prose poem. It reads more like a prose poem. It's a prologue, but the very first essay only just deals with his dying, suddenly, and his dying, how death is treated in a Hindu family, what's the funeral like, what the implications are to lose a man in your life. Then slowly I start with, this next is about getting ready to leave, because once he's gone, there's no way we could stay in a big city. It was too small a family to be living alone in a huge city. From then it goes on, we relocated. Then how we relocated, the very first year is important, how we got through that first year without him. And then I take it like, puberty, menstruation, how my mother dealt with girls growing up, how she had to protect us. Then for example, there's an essay on just photographs, just photographs that we lived through. I'm leafing through an album. So the entire essay is just looking at photographs and going back into my father's life. One essay is about my grandmother, who was she became a big part of our life because my mother was alone, so my mother's mother who came to stay with us. So the whole essay is about her past. Then there is an essay, I go back and reminisce about, one essay is all about my mother, how she met my father, what she did, how she was raised, and what are the norms she broke, and and her courage and her strengths. So I have been told that I didn't do it consciously, but if someone who reads the book says, even though it's a memoir, it's supposed to be about me, but after reading the book, people have told me that it's your mother who comes out as being the strong woman, and I don't see that, and as a writer, I'm not supposed to see that, I guess. It just comes out automatically for a reader. It does, because You have to remember, I wrote this book as part of my MFA training. So so I've been through several teachers who taught classes and non-fiction classes for us. And not only that, I've had several visiting writers who used to come to our university and workshop pieces from this book. So each essay has been workshopped by my peers, fellow students, and then several teachers. So the one common thing that I was taught was any book, especially a non-fiction book, which is made up of personal essays, has to have an arc, in the sense it has to start somewhere, it has to end somewhere. So the arc here is growing up, reaching adulthood, getting through high school, getting through college, and then settling down. So I feel it might be not an equal arc, it might be a little lopsided arc, but it is an arc, because then once I met my husband, once I married, and then life tapers off then, because then it becomes a steady graph. It ends with the fact that the last essay is about the fact that how I met my future husband, and the reactions about that, because it was not a traditional arranged marriage. And it ends with that. So because I was so conscious about taking only one period of my life, I left the country after that. So it's like just the 10 years from the time I was 10 to 20. So the last essay is about just meeting him, and that's it. It's a huge clash, because a 31-year-old woman raising 2 girls, living alone, and not listening to anything, relatives, neighbors, nosy neighbors, well-meaning relatives. It doesn't have to be taken in a negative light, but well-meaning people. For example, there's a small thing about changing schools for us. We were in a convent, and my mother decided, oh, we need public school education. And neighbors saying, do you know the reputation of that school? There was a girl who had an abortion there, she died, it was illegal. But so you have to listen. My mother fought through all that and said, I trust my girls, I trust myself in raising my girls. So, and if you think of the time period, it's a huge thing that, oh, she took those decisions on her own. She didn't consult anyone. She said, this is the time to change schools, you will change schools. This is the time to make you independent, you will be made independent. So there's a huge social interaction and social clash between what is personal, and at the same time, she was herself struggling. She did not let that come out. She did not see society see her grief, her problems. We saw it as girls. My sister doesn't even remember that. I remember her turmoil, her grief, which she'd never let anyone else see. My major life as a child, the formative years were in Jaipur. So for me, Jaipur is home. There is we used to go every year to visit South relatives, but there was a reason. That's that divide between the South and the North. People are, at least when we were growing up, we had friendly people in the North. Our neighbors are friendly. We loved the city. It let us be independent. We had relatives there, but it let my mother be independent. It was a small city then. Absolutely enjoyed it. But then, see, that's what the essay Color deals with that. There's so much prejudice people don't know. Now it's a global society. You live in America, everyone knows everything. You live here, everyone. But it's like, you are a South Indian, you're supposed to be dark skinned. So that's it's hilarious. It's actually a light essay, but that's how color comes out, will you find my mother was dark, my father was very fair skinned. So she used to say, oh, if my daughter is dark skinned, will she find a boy? And he used to joke, he said, I married you, so somebody will marry her. So it's a small thing, but it makes the essay, it gives the essay depth and gives me a topic to write about.